Do you like books or movies or TV shows or songs with lyrics? You know, things that were created by writers? Of course you do. Do you like watching people type? I doubt it. Do you like hearing people tell you about how they came up with the things they type? Maybe. And there are lots of shows like that. But this isn't one of them. Do you ever procrastinate? Writers do too. So, if you've ever enjoyed a great book or film or TV show or song or poem, and you thought, I'll bet the woman who wrote this epic high fantasy TV series, or the guy who wrote this funny queer sci-fi novel, or the person who writes this punch you in the gut poetry would be really fun to hang out with, and I'd like to hear them confess their bad not writing habits. You're in the right not writing place. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass over there is Doug, the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff, and Doug does his best to try to make me sound better. From Not a Pike Publishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Hello. Today's secret word is soulless.
Ooh. Welcome, everyone. Today's guest is LeeAnn McLennan. LeeAnn is still trying to figure out this thing called life. She's trying to balance work as a systems engineer and being a writer, as well as her preference to lose herself in a book. She's written a trilogy about teenage superheroes, the Supernormal Legacy trilogy. I highly, highly recommend it. So thank you so much for being on the show today, LeeAnn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So as you know, shows on YouTube, shows also a podcast, means half the audience cannot see us. And so we always, dress up. We, want to look good for the folks on YouTube,
Absolutely.
But for the folks who are experiencing this as a podcast, we want to make sure they know how we've dressed up. So what did you choose to wear for the show today?
I wanted to go full on glam today because I really wanted to honor the legacy of like the 1950s, like beautiful dresses with the slightly off the shoulder neckline, beautiful embroidered flowers with maybe just a little bit of glitter in there, not glitter,
Oh, yeah.
but a little bit of glam. My necklace is an heirloom necklace, and it's just a lot of diamonds and rubies and emeralds all put together just from the family legacy.
Very cool.
Yeah, and you really can't see it, but my waistline is so tiny, nice little flare out of a full skirt, and I'm just ready to go to the party.
And your hair looks fantastic.
Thank you. It's a beautiful updo. Exactly.
Well, I wanted to match that level of complement that, but also go with something that was a little retro and edgy. So I found this light blue, I wanted to go tuxedo so that I could be as formal choice. But I found this light blue denim one from the early aughts, and this was a kind of a runway thing at the time, people doing the denim tuxedo. And so this is all distressed jeans, if folks could see my knees, there's but at the same time it's cut like a tux. And so I am ready for the Met Gala, or I'm ready to go painting for gold. Like I
love it.
Very comfortable, very breathable. So yeah, I am enjoying the denim tuck. So that's what I decided to go with today.
A nice homage to your Northwest roots.
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly. Beautiful.
And at the same time, more highbrow than I normally dress.
Exactly.
This is because I wanted to be formal.
Well done.
So this week the show's all about how we procrastinate. What has been keeping you away from your writing this week in terms of pop culture?
In terms of pop culture, well, as mentioned, or will be mentioned, I would just rather read than anything else. And I have been reading Hellbent, and it's the sequel to The Ninth House. And I'm going to totally mangle the writer's name, how do you say her last name? I will look it up. We'll come back to it. She's the one who's written like Smoke and Bone and that series.
And we'll post it in the show notes too, so people can
perfect.
So this is Hellbent. Is which one in the series?
The second book.
Okay.
And what I love about it, it's magical realism, and it takes place at Yale, which the writer actually teaches there.
Oh, okay.
And it supposes that the societies, Skull and Bones and other societies, are, may or may not, but it supposes that they are doing magic and using that magic to help their alumni make good financial decisions, help their alumni write amazing books. So they're really tapping into this magic that is all over New Haven. And then the main character, Galaxy Stern, works for a society that uh, is kind of the watchman who watches the watchers. So the Life Society, they're the ones who go and make sure that the other societies are not stepping outside their boundaries.
Misusing the magic.
Exactly, exactly. I won't tell you more than that. That just sets you up, but it's just amazing, and some good twists and turns, but also just a main character who is relatable, but also different enough from me that I'm learning about other parts of life.
Yeah.
So I really like that. Yeah, definitely recommend the series. And I'm hoping this is not the last book. I have not finished.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's always the tension. Like, some of our readers, we've got a couple of trilogies. Yours now, Kate Riskow's trilogy is going to come with the third book, and
I can't wait for that.
And I know some people want to, read the first, be in on it when a series starts, but they are willing to endure I hope there's more of this.
Yes.
And some people are like, I'll wait till the third comes out. So,
exactly.
I have my first sequel coming out this year, and then the third, and I'm like, I expect that the sequel is going to be that uncomfortable place in between where some people are going to go, I'll wait for the third to come out. I promise it will come out.
Right.
I started writing that one, but I understand some people want to know that the third is coming out. So
right. Well, and I know with my second book with Root, I left it as a full-on cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And the third book picks up right on the tails of it.
Right.
Right. And I really enjoyed that. Just knowing that I'd left folks in that state was, writers are all a little diabolical, right? We don't always we always serve our readers, but we don't always serve them maybe in the way they want to be served. And so sometimes
well, and because part of our job is to torment our characters,
exactly,
sometimes that transfers to the reader a little too. I'm just taking these people I really like, and what's the cliche where chasing them up a tree and throwing rocks at them.
Exactly.
So if we're doing that to characters, sometimes we may do that to our readers too. Sorry.
Exactly. Sorry, not sorry.
Part of the game.
Right. So in pop culture, that's what I've been doing. I want to watch The Last of Us very much, but I am as a writer, but just always as a person, I've had that one reason I hate camping, frankly, is because I'm sleeping out there and I'm like, all right, well, who's going to come murder me? I'm
yes,
it's going to happen. What's it going to be? And,
yes, exactly.
Watching something that's scary and has zombies and stuff, I love it, but I got to kind of gird my loins. I kind of get ready.
I highly recommend. I'm only an episode in. But I messaged my son as soon as I finished the first episode, because he's watched it as well, and I was like, am I wrong, or is this the best thing to ever be an adaptation of a video game made into cinema ever?
What did he say?
Yeah, it is. He was like, I can't think of anything, and he's a total video game fan as well.
Nice.
Video games so rarely transfer to film. There's so many bad ones.
Oh, yeah.
It was good to see one that's so well done.
I'm hearing lots of great things.
Yeah, I mean, it's this huge universe in terms of its scope, but it's so intimate. There are few people left, and so you are getting to see these actors really navigate. What are we gonna, how would these people respond to a world that is hostile and also depopulated? There are not a lot of people, and
can't imagine.
So it's well worth your time.
Awesome.
I'm not sure if the second episode come out yet, or is that?
I think it's next week. I think they're doing the week by week thing. So yeah. And and as sometimes, especially as mostly an introvert, I'm always like, oh, could there be fewer people? But I would prefer that it not happen like in such a awful way.
Exactly, catastrophic way. Yeah. Well, there's an interesting kind of sociological critique of monster stories that we tend to look for vampire stories when times are good, because then we're concerned about gender politics, sexual politics, relationships. And so when the economy's roaring, we want vampire stories. And when
Interesting.
we feel really uncomfortable with civilization potentially falling apart, we want zombie stories, because they provide us with this fantasy that I would be the survivor. I would know what to do. I would
Right.
do so well. And, watching it with Crystal is so great, because she's like, no way, I would be dead in the first wave.
Same.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to live in this society anyway. It's awful,
Same.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I think I would, build a community of like-minded people who would watch out for each other. I love building community. And she's
You're
like,
so
nope,
good at
I'm
it,
done.
right?
I'm out of this.
Yeah, I'd be, because I'm short, I'm blind in one eye, I'm anti-gun.
Yeah.
Though that might be the time to pick up a gun. I'll give you that. That might be the exception. And I'm highly anxious, and I don't sleep well without my white noisemaker. So I'd be
Yeah.
screwed.
Yeah, you're not sleeping. Well, and one of the things that I love, I don't remember when I learned about this, is zombie stories never use the word zombie. And the reason for that is they all exist in a universe where the people have never been exposed to zombie
Oh my
stories before. Because if
gosh.
they had, they would all say, well, everybody knows this is the way you deal with zombies because we've seen these movies. So in
Right.
zombie comedies, they'll reference zombies.
Right.
And somebody will actually say, like, haven't you people ever watched The Walking Dead or whatever? But in the serious ones, in The Walking Dead, they never say the word zombie. They are
I have never
walkers,
heard
they are
that.
whatever. Because if you
Yeah.
introduce the word zombie, then you imply these people should have known better,
Right.
right? Shouldn't they
Headshots
have
and yeah.
seen, the Romero movies or something? And so they follow that in The Last of Us. There is no reference to zombies. The people
Cool.
are totally unprepared, and the world. And they also provide one of the good things about this one. This is not a spoiler. We find this out in the first few seconds of the show, but they provide a kind of quasi-scientific justification for why this is happening. So it's not, which I think it is defensible to say there's a supernatural explanation, which the Romero ones do, hell is full. And that's why people are coming back from the grave. This is not scientific. But this one does this, these people have been infected in some way.
Right.
And so that makes it feel gritty and like this could actually, I mean, this couldn't happen, but this could, it is better than some of the zombie stories. I'll have students who will say, this is how I would handle a zombie apocalypse. And I have to say to them, you understand that zombies are impossible. Like that really is, defies the laws of physics, but some folks are so into that kind of mentality of, I want to believe I would be a survivor, that they get into this fantasy of, so therefore I want it to happen.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's not good. You don't want a mass casualty event that, that leaves most humans dead. That's terrible.
It is terrible. And, it's like, I bet even there's so many things we don't even think about that we'd be dealing with. I did like World War Z a lot.
Yeah.
Because the book, not
the book is better than the film.
Right. Yes. And the film's fine.
It's like fine. It's a fun,
right.
Hollywood version, but the book is really thoughtful.
So good. I love the way that he presented it as survivor stories, and this happened when this happened, and just really immediately made it intimate because of that.
And it was done like, this is this rigorous history we are keeping of this thing that happened, and you're like, wow, this is really scientific and thoughtful.
It's so cool. The thing that I always carry with me that is how they handled North Korea in that, because essentially North Korea went dark and they don't know what happened in North Korea. I love that.
Yeah, well, and I love the Mumbai scene where they're, everybody, I mean, it seems so logical to me. People would run for the ocean.
Yeah.
And recognizing any way where everyone's running, you don't want to be running. If people are the problem, don't go where all the people are going. And so once there's an outbreak in the water, that scene is terrifying.
Yeah.
But Crystal, as we were watching it, was saying these people need to get on a boat, and I was like, read World War Z. Don't run for the ocean. That's not good.
Right. Don't put yourself where you're confined with other people in any way.
From other people.
I loved in the movie. I liked the Jerusalem scene. I think it was Jerusalem scene, where they realized people were getting infected, and then they have that scene where they're trying to scale the wall and they're using the. I mean, just whatever you think about the movie, I think that's an amazing just visual.
It looked really cool.
You're
Yeah.
like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, and Noah and I were talking about how in the Walking Dead, there's a spin-off series that's
Mhm.
it's not called Tales of the Walking Dead.
It's like return, not the Return of the Walking
Yeah,
Dead,
I
or
can't remember, but it's this
yeah.
spin-off group. And in the original Walking Dead, they tell the story of the aftermath. And Rick Grimes, the
Mhm.
main character, wakes up later.
Yeah,
And and in the spin-off series, they do go back and have
they show.
flashbacks of the what is like right away when it happened. And
Cool.
the thing he was pointing out to me that's really interesting is in that universe, people don't know that their loved ones are dead. And so that,
Oh wow.
in the immediate aftermath of whatever catastrophe has caused this, people are navigating, how do I take care of this person who's clearly ill? No, they're not ill, they're dead. And so he
Yeah.
said that first scene is really interesting to watch
Wow.
and then think about, oh, now I understand these characters from later, but I can identify the trauma that they've all been through, which wasn't depicted in
Right.
Walking Dead. So
That's
that's
interesting.
yeah, that I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I guess I have to watch that spin-off series that's I think 7 seasons long or something. So
Something crazy.
in my
Well,
free time.
have you seen? Have you watched Sweet Tooth? I think it was
No.
on. It was on Net. It's on Netflix. I want to say it came out a year or two ago. Not even in the past 3 years. Time and space have no
Right,
meaning,
right.
so I don't even know. But I
Was
know
it a
it came out.
film or a TV show?
It's a series,
Okay.
and it's based, I think, on a graphic novel. And it's another post-apocalyptic story where there's a virus. So in this one, there's a virus that kills people, and the people just die. But it's extremely infectious.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, babies are being born kind of right around the same time that have the characteristics of animals. So
Mm.
they are sort of a
Oh,
human
I did
animal.
think I did where the kid has the
The
horns.
horns, right,
Yes.
right, yes.
I wonder, are they going to do a second
They
season of
are
that?
doing a
Because
second
oh,
season.
good. I
Yeah, because
enjoyed that. I
that
didn't
was
think I
really
would. I
good.
thought, oh, this
Yeah,
looks a little too twee and cute, and I don't think it's going to be good. And
right.
it was good.
It was really good.
Thoughtful, and it was like,
Yeah,
where is this going, and what does this mean? And
right,
I like when they give you something where you're saying this could be a meaningful metaphor. I just haven't figured it out yet. So I
right.
hope that they're going somewhere
They
with
are.
it.
They,
That's
yeah.
going to be
Yeah, I
good.
did read that they're going to do a second series. Yeah, because I think the addition of, I can't remember anybody's character except for Sweet Tooth, but the doctor and his wife who was infected, and what the moral journey that doctor is going through. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just. I won't spoil that, but it was just so striking. And then the moral journey that the guy that Sweet Tooth, the traveler that Sweet
And
Tooth
their
looks at,
bond is
their
really
bond, yeah. But then
yeah.
his moral journey, where he, how he got and what it,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was just
no
like,
spoilers,
wow,
but he's a complex character, and I
he's so
appreciate that.
complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I look forward to that. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and do check out Last of Us. I think it's
I
going
will. Oh, I will.
to go somewhere good.
Yeah, nice.
And they're, again, comic book or not comic book, video game stuff generally doesn't translate. And I think because
What
of
was
the
it?
nature of this one, it was such a cinematic game anyway. In
Okay,
fact, I think they use some of the same actors even. So I think
that's
that's
awesome.
a strength is they were thinking of this
That
in a cinematic
connection,
way when they made the game rather than,
right?
well, we need to go to the next big boss fight, and following kind of the tropes of video games, which are totally legitimate in that medium, but don't necessarily translate to this. Whereas that game kind of lingers and is slow and is creepy, and
That's
they just
cool.
could lean into that. So
Yeah, I don't play video games, so it's kind of it's me. It's very meaningful to hear from someone who has played the game and other people that it works for them.
yeah, that it
So
actually works for a change.
yeah,
Because so often, video game aficionados are like, I love this world and I love video games, and yet this cinematic version stinks. And it's
I,
because some things don't translate from one medium to another
right,
really well.
right.
So
Well, they're the experts. I
right,
mean, I'm going to
right.
listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really cool. That's awesome. So that's kind of where I am. An overly imaginative person who reads scary stuff.
Yes.
And then I recently reread the beginning of a series by Cherie Priest that takes place in Seattle and other parts called Bone Shaker.
Mm,
Wow, I'm terrible with names. And it's kind of pre-apocalyptic in a way, or no,
interesting.
pre times, I think is a better way to put it. It
Oh,
takes
okay.
place in the 1800s. around the time of our Civil War, but things are a little different. And anyway, it was
I will.
also a scenario where they had um, living dead types, and it was so well written that I had a little trouble sleeping. So even in my,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, which is, I mean,
which is
when
awesome.
something is so effective that it's affecting you outside of the text, it's working. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, I'll look that up and put that in the show notes too for folks to
Fantastic.
check out. So, what
Yeah.
about in the news? What's been distracting you from your work in the news?
I will lead in by saying I am horribly obsessed with politics. It's all Trump's fault. I would like to be more ignorant than I am, but I felt like I had to get
Yep,
connected and involved.
right there with you.
And exactly. But it was the House election, so that was horrible. And now it's George Santos.
It's
And
wild.
it's just insane. Like his web of lies. And I actually want him to really be a drag queen from Brazil, because
Right.
how hilarious is that he would be in the GOP? But I'm just
And who knows? Like,
who
I mean, he's to the point where when he says, "No, I'm not this," everybody's saying, "Nobody can believe you about anything. You have
right.
fabricated everything in your resume." So
Yeah.
I am on the one hand enjoying the comedy of it. Like, I love the memes. I love what folks are doing with, George
Right.
Santos as a character. And on the other hand, on a very serious side, I'm like, let's acknowledge he is the perfect avatar for the modern Republican Party. I'm
Absolutely.
somebody who I've always been pretty liberal, but I was in a place where I could say I can respect principles coming out of the Republican Party that I disagree with. We can
Right.
have a legitimate discussion about the size of government, the rate of taxation, the
Absolutely.
kind of rate of progress.
Right.
I understand people were scared by the pace of progress socially and wanted things to just slow down, and they weren't necessarily saying, "Oh, we hate everyone." They were saying, "Let's go slowly."
Mm-hmm.
That scared them. That is not the Republican Party of today. That is,
I don't, yeah,
and so I think he is the perfect epitome of a party that says, "We will keep this guy we know to be a liar because
right.
we have chosen to be the party of liars. That is
Seriously.
okay
Yeah.
for us."
Absolutely.
Anything for power at any extreme. And I'm
At
like,
any,
let's paint them as the George Santos party and make it clear to people this is who they have chosen to be. If
exactly.
you vote for any Republican, you are voting for this machine.
That guy.
Um,
Well, and so the party of liars, the party of you can't trust them, the party of not getting shit done,
right.
stuff done. Sorry.
Yep. It's all about the
Yeah.
drama and the clicks and the,
Right.
make the libs look bad and
Right.
make them mad,
Right.
and if that's all you've got for people,
You
I
got
am
nothing.
hopeful. Where I find hope is that especially the next generation is going to go, we can't even take these people seriously.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, there is no legitimate debate with people who are, running George Santos as one of, keeping him and making a choice to keep him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we can't talk with you. And when you do
Right.
crazy things, instead of saying, okay, both sides, like, no, this is not both sides anymore. This is the
No.
George Santos party. And let's instead spend our energy trying to push the, Dems where we want them to go because they're the only
Seriously.
party
Yeah.
interested in governing.
Yeah. They have no policy. They I mean, especially if you compare what's probably going to happen over the next 2 years in the House, which is going to be nothing, with the last 2 years just in the House, the Senate, and the president. Even though we didn't get everything done that
Right.
we would have liked to, there are definitely some huge gaps, but so much was done,
Yeah,
and
a
so
ton,
many
and a lot of it. I
positive
was
things.
talking with somebody who shall go unnamed, where they were saying, but I don't feel a lot of those choices that the Dems made, and a lot of them were things that are far off.
So
These
yeah,
huge investments in combating climate change that are the largest we've
infrastructure.
ever made,
Yeah,
infrastructure. You
yeah,
won't feel those for 10, 20, 30 years. And so you have
absolutely.
to have a party that's serious and saying, we recognize this might not be an electoral win in 2 years for us, but it's the right thing to do because
Mm,
20 years from now, it's going to make a big difference in your life.
right,
And that's hard when the other party's saying we only care about the 24-hour news cycle. It's
right.
only about whether or not this
Yeah.
benefits us tomorrow. We don't care about what's going to happen 10 or 20 years.
Right. Like
So
I'm telling kids who, if they have a STEM attribute right now, like, hey, if you're interested in STEM, get into something with like civil engineering, mechanical, engineering, because or like even infrastructure planning. There's going to be jobs, and it's going to
ton.
be amazing.
And it's
You
good.
know,
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. There's really
yeah,
cool transformations we need to make to the way that we live in terms of, I would love to see high-speed rail system that is connected to a nationwide solar grid. Right
That would be
now,
cool.
we don't have the infrastructure to have solar plants in Arizona provide power to New York City. Well, why not? If you connected it to a nationwide high-speed rail system,
that's cool.
That would be connected. That's a huge investment, but in the long run, I mean, if you or I could hop on a train that within 4 hours could have us in Chicago, we wouldn't.
That'd be amazing.
And that's technologically possible.
Right. We just haven't made that investment. We're getting there. And we have a great transportation secretary. He's taking responsibility. He's such an amazing speaker. We're going to see more from him at some point.
I expect so too.
Yeah.
He's serious and he's competent. And
exactly.
Are Americans going to decide competence is more valuable than drama? And because if you want wild and what's going to be the next thing, you could go to George Santos. Like,
oh my gosh,
who knows what he's going to say tomorrow?
Yeah, right.
But that is, who's going to know who's going to be?
Who's his new name? What's his new name going to be? Because we don't really know who he is.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you can have people who actually care about getting things done. And then we could go back to, I know folks who are very frustrated with the Democratic Party for X and Y reason. They haven't done enough on this. They haven't done enough on that. And I understand where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Like, they're the only game in town as far as getting things done. So spend your energy supporting and pushing the group that wants to get things done, rather than saying, because I criticize them, I'm fine with George Santos' party running things, because nothing will get done.
So. No, you've got to we have so much to accomplish, and we're going to be at a mostly standstill for the next 2 years, I believe, sadly, but I could be wrong. But
and what's going to take up the news cycle is going to be stuff happening at the state level. And that's where I am freaked out. I'm looking at stuff like what's happening in Arkansas. I was reading yesterday, a bill was proposed in Arkansas to make it a Class C, I believe, and I could be getting the details wrong here, to make it a Class C felony for a librarian to check out a book that includes gender identity.
What?
Well,
wow.
Gender identity is being a cishet male. That's a gender identity, right? And so every book, there's no book that does not include gender identity. And so
people are crazy.
I don't know how that will play out. And, some folks are saying, don't overreact. It's going to get knocked down because it's a First Amendment violation. And I'm saying, you can't put librarians in this place of terror. Where they're saying any minute I could be charged with a felony until this case reaches the Supreme Court. And we're certainly seeing that happen in Florida in the schools. Where
oh my God.
Preemptively, they're saying I have to take every book by an African-American author off my shelf.
Or every,
losing my job.
Right.
And that's a horrible thing to have happening to the students of Florida. So,
and just think about doctors and nurses with the abortion, with
exactly, where they're saying preemptively, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let you die of sepsis.
Exactly.
Because I'm so nervous about losing my medical license that you're going to just die. And, when you're as close to death as I can let you get, then maybe I'll start treating you, because then it's clear for me in court that this was about sepsis and not abortion. And I'm just going, this is going to kill a lot of people.
It's going to kill a lot. It's going to kill a lot of people. It's going, and then for the kids, the people, not just children, not just kids, but the folks who are going through gender identity thoughts with themselves, whatever those might be, like, who am I, why do I feel this way? Now, what's so great is when they can read a book, just read a book that they connect to. I'm not alone. I'm not the only one going through this. Enough people wrote about it that it's the thing. And now, okay, maybe there's a breath of fresh air. If they're being restricted from that, suicide, people cramming themselves into lifestyles that mean nothing to who they are,
and that are so miserable, and then it becomes generational. Why was my parent so miserable?
Right.
Your parent was miserable because your parent didn't want to be the person they were forced to be.
Exactly.
Don't do that to the next generation.
Right. Yeah. It's incomprehensible to me to even want that for someone. Just let it be. Who cares?
Yeah. So, if it was just kind of George Santos theatrics, we could just laugh.
Right.
But there's going to be a lot of damage at the state level. And so I hope folks are keeping an eye on what is going on and trying to make decisions about it. As a parent, If my son came to me and said, I'm thinking about going to a university in Texas or Florida, I would be
Mhm.
saying, do not.
Yeah,
It's a waste of money. Don't go to a school that's not going to be taken seriously,
mhm.
because employers down the road are going to go, wait, you went to a school where you could not possibly study history accurately because it was
Right.
banned by the state?
Yeah,
Then what does your diploma from that school mean? So I
exactly.
hope we'll see some folks reacting. And also, I don't think any person who could ever possibly get pregnant should be making a choice to go to Texas, Florida, these states. It's
Mhm.
dangerous to
Idaho.
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
how that will
absolutely hear
play out,
you.
I don't know.
It will be interesting. I've even read quite a bit that even at the school board level, that a lot of it has, well, with the Newburgh
Yeah,
schools.
here in Oregon, this is
Yeah,
not far away. This is in
no,
between where we live.
exactly. Now apparently they've rescinded all of that very quietly,
Yes.
which is interesting to me.
Yes, for folks who don't know, Newburgh, one of the school boards here, had this sweep of MAGA folks take over, and then they put out some policy proposals to say nobody in a classroom could have a pride flag, they couldn't have a Black
Black
Lives
Lives,
Matter
yeah.
poster or anything like that in their classroom. Well, the way that at first it was just those, and that's clearly illegal. You cannot possibly do that. And so in order to try and make it legal, they then said, well, you couldn't have any signs of any kind. Well, that included, and with the exceptions of, I believe they allowed the American flag and there was something else. But I mean, you couldn't have a map like in your classroom without technically being in violation of their policies. And
So ridiculous.
it was
Yeah.
it was so over the top. And it's because they had no interest in educating. These were people who were doing this because they had ambitions to
Mhm. Go up a level. Yeah,
yeah,
make a
just
name for
make a
themselves.
name for themselves. And
Yeah.
so there has been, what's been frustrating to watch is there has been insufficient pushback from the community. And finally, the community is waking up and saying, this is really a problem.
Yeah.
But before it was like, oh yeah, well, I am also opposed to, I guess, Black Lives Mattering. I am also opposed to people, gay people existing. Therefore, I will allow this madness. And so,
Yeah.
finally the community is waking up and saying this, as much as that aligned with my politics, which right away, deeply problematic, I do want my kids to have teachers. I do,
Yes.
and there was a mass exodus. Their entire tech department quit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in one day, the entire tech department
Good
said,
for them.
this is not a place, the techies in so many of these districts could be working in so many other fields and making more money.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
do this because they, care about kids. They want to be involved in an
Yeah.
institution that they value. And when it gets to that place, they're saying, forget it. I can go to the company down the road and, run their servers.
Exactly.
And so they all left at once.
Wow.
They lost a bunch of bus drivers to the point where like the superintendent was having to drive bus, and I
Yeah.
believe illegally.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I can't just drive a bus. Like you need
Right.
a certain kind of license. So I could be wrong about that. I don't want to get myself in legal hot water, but what I heard is didn't have the right licensure to be doing so. So
Wow.
that's yeah, they're a real mess, and I think that's should be a heads up for every other school district, at least in the state of Oregon and in blue states, where
Yeah.
they're saying, oh, I know that my governor is not going to pass this horrific stuff. Yeah, but your local school board may. Keep
Right.
an eye on that.
Yes. And vote in all elections. And
Yes.
the reality is in Oregon, I've lived grew up in Texas, and I've lived in North Carolina. So I've voted in all those places. I lie. Actually, I've never voted in Texas. So I've only voted in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But in Oregon, when I first moved here, and like it's around election time and a ballot shows up in the mail, I'm like, what's going on? What's
Right.
this thing? And they're like, you can vote by mail. I'm like, this is genius.
It's brilliant. Yeah, for folks outside of Oregon, you don't know how great our system is. We get our ballots by mail.
Yeah.
You can drop them in a drop box if you feel safer about doing so, or you can put them in the mail. And it gets gathered. In fact, in my county, this is really cool. My local county elections official reached out to me. Oh gosh, what is it? 2014. It was an off year congressional election to inform me that I hadn't signed and so called me and said,
that's amazing.
oh, you forgot to sign this. Would you like to come in? And I drove into the county seat and I signed it so that my vote counted. So cool. And I was like, this is so cool. Somebody who cares whether or not we vote.
Right. And you get this thick pamphlet, and then, but you could also, like, you're sitting in your home, you could look up online. You get the space that you need to inform yourself as much as you want to be informed.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to have a different level of that, right? But the point is, you can do it. No one's like hanging over. It's just your space to make decisions and be informed, but also do it so easily.
Yeah. Well, and it takes so many voter suppression efforts away. You can't
Exactly.
do this thing that they've done in some states where they say, we just won't put as many polling places in Black neighborhoods so that the lines are longer. Or
right.
Georgia will prevent you from bringing water to people in line, so they have to be miserable.
Right.
Or,
right.
oh, maybe the local place where you vote isn't ADA compliant, and
right.
so people with disabilities can't vote there.
Exactly.
If you can send a piece of mail, you can vote in the state of Oregon.
Yeah. And
really
they have,
nice.
It's very secure. It's fantastic. So at least in Oregon, there is very little excuse not to vote.
Yeah.
I can understand in other places that it's not as convenient and all that. It should be, but it's not.
And yet, so, even in Oregon, there are a lot of people who don't vote. And I think we've made it as easy as possible for you, and understanding that your rights really are on the line. And I know that it's exhausting because they hear this election is the most important election in your life. And they're like, yep, I hear that every single election.
Right. But maybe every election is the most important election in your life.
They really are getting more and more important.
Exactly.
And so recognizing, I've got to vote or else there are really dire consequences. And I've got to hold my nose, which is hard for folks too. But I'm not really excited about this candidate. Recognize you're voting for, we're more parliamentary than we've ever been. You're voting for a party. You're voting for a big machine, and you may be putting somebody in place who's not your favorite. You're not excited about them, but you are, diminishing the machine on the other side that really has some very dangerous ideas about your life.
Absolutely.
So that's hard for folks to see.
Yeah, because and I guess I've always been a person who I don't have a lot of heroes, because I kind of don't want to have a lot of heroes. I know that sounds strange, but it's like, there's no human being. There are a lot of really good human beings and a lot of really bad ones, but there's no human being that is, to me, heroic, not pure enough. I'm not sure the words I'm looking for, but to the standard that a hero should be, because we're all black and we're all have shades of gray.
Yep.
And that's great. I think we should. I think that's more interesting. We don't need everything to be just all precise, but they have the expression "never meet your heroes."
Yeah.
If you don't have heroes, it's not going to be a problem. But because of that, I'm not going to put someone on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden's not perfect. He's probably too old to be president, but you know what? He's a darn good president. The whole no swearing thing is messing me up, by the way.
He's competent, and that is a low bar. Like we should acknowledge that's a low bar, and also it's a bar that he meets that the other side wouldn't have met. So that's something,
And he surrounds himself with
good people.
That's, to me, it's not just are you competent, but are you going to build that circle? And that's what he's done so well.
I mean, I certainly have my issues with Joe Biden. I think a lot of folks don't know that back in the 90s, the Anita Hill hearings.
Yes.
One of the things that made that so awful was that there was a decision made to only interview Anita Hill and not all the other accusers. If they brought out 20 accusers, it would have been a very different story. We know Anita Hill's name because there was a choice made to say, we're going to only allow one person.
That poor woman.
And that choice was made by Joe Biden. He
exactly.
was head of that committee, and I will never fully forgive him for that. Like, he was this white guy, and at the same, so I'm not going to, vote for him in a primary. Like, there are better candidates who didn't do that to Anita Hill. At the same time, if I am faced with a choice between Joe Biden and somebody who's going to build concentration camps on the Texas border and babies out of mothers' arms, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden every single time.
Damn straight, darn straight.
I'll vote for him when he's 95.
Right.
Because the alternative is a lot worse for a lot of people. And I think that's hard for folks.
And from what I understand, not that this forgives him, he has acknowledged his mistakes.
Yes. And he can learn from mistakes and grow, which so many politicians can't say, I did something wrong and I need to grow from that.
Exactly.
Because they're afraid if they acknowledge error, people will hold it against them. And people do. People say, oh, you did this wrong. And they're like, yes, I did that wrong. See, you're weak. No, acknowledging error is a sign of strength.
But I think our current society really does punish a lot of people for acknowledging errors. We
Yeah.
don't always give people that second chance. I think about James Gunn and the Guardians of, so he had, I can't remember the exact details, but he made a Twitter joke that was really very inappropriate. I don't remember the
I
details,
don't
but
remember this
it was
story, but
something to do. I'm not going to say what I think it is because I really think I am misremembering, but it was very inappropriate. And he was actually kicked off the second Guardians of the Galaxy
oh yeah,
film.
I
They
do
were
remember
like,
seeing about that. Yeah.
right. And he apologized and was like, yeah, I was trying to make a name for myself. I was trying to be edgy. It was a really bad decision. And, so he acknowledged that. But I think what he probably would not have gotten the job back if, Chris Pratt and, all of the folks in that, on the film were like, dude, bring him back. We liked him. He's a good person. He screwed up.
Yeah.
So what? I mean, he screwed up. He acknowledged that he screwed up.
Yep. And
Yeah.
that's so key. And I think this goes back to the first George Bush Sr. Campaign and Willie Horton. The Dukakis,
Right.
pardons someone,
Right.
and then that is used as an attack against him. And the lesson,
I'd
unfortunately, that our
forgotten about that.
politicians learned is
Is
never say, I made a mistake. I should
right.
not have, pardoned and released Willie Horton. That was a bad thing. And
Yeah.
so they said, anytime you double down, always double down, never admit to error. And that has really harmed our politics. We would be so much better off with people saying, I made a mistake. Let's go in a different direction. That was bad.
Yeah.
And maybe we will relearn that if some members of the Republican Party decide they want to be an anti-Trump party again and say, I need to rehabilitate my image. It's okay to admit I was wrong. I got swept up in this movement. I did some things for votes that I'm embarrassed about. I supported some people. I tolerated some things that were really abominable to me. I think that would be really good for the nation to then say, okay, good, people on both sides can acknowledge error.
Yeah.
But as long as it's going to be doubling down is always weakness, or doubling down is the only solution because acknowledging error is always weakness, we're going to be in for a lot of people that will have to hold accountable for a long time.
Right. I mean, Kevin McCarthy's never going to let George Santos go.
Right.
Because he needs that vote.
He needs the vote.
And it's so cynical.
Yeah. Yep. And that, I think the rest of us then need to hold the party accountable and say, you really have chosen this. You've revealed something about yourselves. Whereas the Dems had, what was the senator's name who was formerly on SNL?
Al Franken.
Al Franken.
Yeah.
And he clearly had done some objectionable things and they said, you're out. And I feel like that's a real illustration. George Santos gets to stay. Al Franken has to go. That tells you a lot about not just the individuals, but the parties.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. All right. So, lots of stuff there.
I love this. Like, this is the stuff that I enjoy thinking about. And it does end up affecting our writing in this, way where it's like, this is the milieu that we are working in. And these are the ideas we're thinking about. And eventually they'll find our ways into our fiction in ways that I hope are constructive and helpful to readers. Like, oh yeah, I had not thought of that. Not just preaching to the choir. That's one thing I know I do, and I need to watch out for that. I'm just saying to people who already agree, oh yeah, it's terrible that. But like, hey, are there, even folks on my side of the aisle who are saying, oh, this person's evil and therefore evil forever. No, if we can lift up the idea of acknowledging error, we can create a community where people can be welcomed back in. Let's do that in fiction and represent it so that people can see that in the real world and value it. So
yeah, there's I just try to imagine creating a character like George Santos. I'm not sure he could be a believable character.
Well, no, it's such a good point. We have reached the point where you can't parody it. Like, you can't satire this because before George Santos, if you'd written the story of George Santos, people would say that's unbelievable.
Right. And now you're like,
that's the reality we live in.
That's crazy.
I keep joking that, this universe is poorly written. Like, whoever is responsible is a hack. Yeah. It's the
1,000 monkeys riding on the typewriters, right?
Absolutely. So in addition to the new stuff, hobbies, what's been maybe a little healthier? What's been keeping you from your writing?
Terrible obsession. So hobbies. So, it's funny. I consider writing a hobby, though I'm not sure that's an accurate thing because it's more serious than a hobby,
Right.
but is that really fair to anyway, I think about that a lot. But in the hobby space, I love to cook. And I love to cook, and it's to the point where my husband has no fear of giving me cooking tools for things like Christmas and birthday. Like it's not, because
He
that's
doesn't
the
feel
cliche.
like, oh yeah, because that is a fraught gift. You have to
It's yeah,
establish in your relationship that this is legitimate and okay,
exactly,
and not an
exactly,
obligation.
exactly. So I'm like, cool, I get to make this new recipe because I get to buy new tools. So
Yeah.
I'm a cooking gadget geek. But I also just love to cook because I love to eat. But cooking is, I love the science of baking. There's an exactness and precision about baking and assembling everything, that is really relaxing in a strange way. Like you're okay, I've created this thing, it came out right, I made this beautiful accomplishment. But like other cooking is less scientific, so there's I love the experimental side of it. Okay, I always, when I read a recipe, I always make the recipe the first time as is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, now this is the baseline for the recipe. This is what the creator of the recipe, the author of the recipe, believes it should taste like. Okay, cool. What do I want to do with
Yeah. But
it?
first, I've established it at least works.
Exactly.
Now, how
And
am
I
I
can
going to
achieve it.
make my
Yeah,
own personal variation on that?
exactly. And we in my family, which is me and my husband, who are the ones eating the food, we have 4 cats, but they don't get people food. So
That's good. That's yeah.
yes,
If they
yeah,
were eating everything you were eating, those would be unhealthy cats.
exactly. There'd be a lot of issues. But the rule of the family is I'll make something. If it's not good, the person, me or Andy, can say it's not good. Let's order pizza,
Ah,
because
nice.
that way it's like it's one meal.
Yeah.
I am privileged enough that one bad meal is not going to hurt me.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know.
Well, and I have this very bad habit of I'm a terrible, terrible, terrible cook. And so
Okay.
I would be so appreciative of somebody else's willingness to cook that I was unwilling to say, I don't like this.
Right.
And in previous relationships, that actually led to some resentment. Why didn't you
Yeah.
tell me you don't like that?
Right.
Oh, because you'd gone to all the trouble, and I felt like it was really nice of you to do it. And
Mhm.
yeah, but then I thought you liked it and made it 5 more times, and you never mentioned that you didn't like it now.
Right.
And so now
Yeah.
with Crystal, she's really upfront about, okay, please don't lie to me. Tell
Yeah.
me that you don't
Right.
like it. We will not
Yeah.
have that again. Or
Right.
she'll do the variations
Or
and
just have it for herself when
that's
it's
which is
yeah.
very nice of her because I'm not, carrying my side of the load on cooking because I'm awful in the kitchen. Like I have messed up macaroni and cheese out of a box multiple times, not just once. My son will tell you, I think 3 times I've cooked mac and cheese out of a box and managed to screw it up.
I
That's
suspect
that's
you're some.
remarkable.
Well, I suspect you just get. Yeah, I expect it's like a squirrel scenario. Squirrel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Not paying
Knowing
close enough
you.
attention. And I put the water in before the powder. Ooh,
Right.
that's not gonna, yeah,
You
just
gotta. It's all
or I put
right.
the
Yeah.
powder in and then put the water on it. See, I just messed it up in my
Now it's
exploration of it.
chunky.
Like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
terrible.
Exactly. Well, Andy doesn't like to cook, and he has specific dishes he makes, which
Yes,
is
that's
which
me.
is
I've got like 4 or 5
exactly.
things that I can do
Yeah.
safely.
And that's wonderful. Honestly, that's enough for most people,
Yeah,
right? I think everyone should have like kind of, you should be able to feed yourself
that's
if
the
you
key.
have
I
to.
can feed myself. I am
Exactly.
capable of keeping myself alive. That's about
Exactly.
all the extent of my skill in the kitchen.
It's a good start. Andy does the dishes.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yep.
the rule. Whoever cooks doesn't clean.
Yeah. I
And
do the
I,
dishes.
yeah,
There are all these other household chores where I'm like,
exactly.
laundry,
Right.
vacuuming. That's me because I don't cook. So
Right.
I will
Yeah.
try and make up for it with all
Yeah.
these other things that
It,
are traditionally like, oh no, one person's going to do the cooking and the vacuuming and the laundry.
mhm.
No, I have, that's not,
Yeah.
that doesn't work. So,
No. Yeah.
um,
I love that. Yeah. It's about the balance,
yeah.
whatever that means in your relationship.
Well,
So,
my thing has been lately has been Legos because
lovely.
my fiance is in the process of purchasing a Lego store, and so
Oh, that's
this
right.
works. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yay.
So we do a lot of Legos and Lego building, and I'm learning a lot
Wonderful.
about the world of Legos. There's a lot more to it than I thought.
There's
So
a
that has
lot.
been a lot of fun, and I think we're even going to try and plan some recordings of this show where we do them live and
Oh, cool.
Legos as we go.
Yeah.
We're going to see if we can get some authors in who've got little kids and say, hey, let's all build Legos together while
Right.
authors talk about their books. I think that would be a kick. So
that would be wonderful because I mean, so when I was a kid, Legos
right.
were, you didn't have, and I actually have no problem with the pre configured sets that people build, because some of them, like Andy built one that was a Land Rover Defender, and it was amazing, right?
Yeah.
But I did love as a kid playing with just that you got the blocks, and you got the different blocks of the different sizes, and I would build towns, and then I would create stories around the Lego towns, and and that was even before you had the Lego people. So I would use the two the two prong blocks. I don't know what the name. Yeah, those are my people.
Yeah.
And the different colors were different people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, as a kid, I built these elaborate castles, and you're same thing. It wasn't the castle set with the directions. It was how can I build, and so it was castles. My thing was castles and spaceships.
Perfect.
And then when the Lego movie came out, there was a character who was named Benny who'd go spaceships, spaceships, and I was like, that's me. I was Benny as a child. Anything that was spaceships.
Oh,
but,
that movie was really fun.
Yeah, it was a kick.
Yeah,
so, and, I have become Benny now. Like
that's awesome. Yay.
Yeah.
Finding that who you really should be.
Yeah, it's well, and now that I've plugged that, it's a good time for our ad break. So we'll let Doug fire up the music for that. Thank you, Doug, for getting us into our ad break, and we will be back shortly. This week's show is brought to you by Zara, the Zombie Apocalypse Rescue Agency. You may have an insurance policy in case you get into a car accident. You may have an insurance policy in case you pass away and want to take care of your dependents. But do you have a policy to make sure someone will come rescue you when you're trapped by a horde of zombies? At that point, you don't want a check from your life insurance company. You want trained professionals to roll up in an armored Humvee, machine guns blazing, and get you and your family the heck out of Dodge. That's what Zara is all about. The Zombie Apocalypse Rescue Agency. We promise to be there when you need us most. So get your policy today. And assuming the zombie apocalypse doesn't happen first, we have a couple of live shows coming up. Come participate in a live recording of Writers Not Writing at the Portland Fan Expo, which is from February 17th to 19th. We'll also be at Norwescon in Seattle, April 6th to 9th. Guests are TBA. We'd love to have you in the live audience. And please bring some fun questions to ask our panels of procrastinating authors. Links to tickets are in the show notes. So welcome back, everybody. So, LeeAnn, what's something you've been thinking about when you aren't writing? Daydreaming is one of those things that is simultaneously part of the process and procrastination. So when you've been daydreaming lately, what have you been thinking about?
I would love it if my life led to the point where I and my husband could buy a mountain house. And my husband and I are both fairly introverted. We're like on the border of introverted, extroverted. So we can go be social, and then we can come home and be in the same house and be recharging. It's one of the really one of the wonderful things about, being married to him. But we also have a lot of hobbies or things that we like to do that are just like heads down. Like for me, it's writing. Andy likes to woodwork. He likes to do photography. He likes maps, and so we would love to buy this, live on a mountain house, and definitely with a good view. Yeah. With some land. There needs to be snow, very picturesque snow at the right times, idyllic. What we should have done is bought some land near Hood River back in the day. Yeah, that would have been ideal.
Back when it was affordable.
So I daydream about that and what kind of life that would be. Yeah. There's probably be a garden. There might be chickens. I don't know. My neighbors have chickens, and they seem like a lot of work. So
yeah, it's balancing. Like the idea of chickens is great. The actual amount of labor might not be as fun.
Exactly. So we're in a good situation here. They give us eggs occasionally, and we get to hear the chickens making chicken noises, which is kind of nice. Yeah. So that. I'm also, so that's the happy daydreaming. I'm also doing a lot of daydreaming world building for my next book, which we can talk about it a little bit later. But it does take place in a different world from ours, but the main characters are actually people from our world. So it's
So portal
fun.
fantasy kind of a
It's
thing
very
where
much
they,
a portal
yeah.
fantasy, yeah. And they get pulled in, and so it's really been fun to daydream about writing this world from their eyes.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's one of the
so,
great things about Portal Fantasy is they can then convey to your reader in our world, this is how this other world,
yeah.
exists and functions, and how it's
Mm-hmm.
different from ours in language we understand. I have so much
Exactly.
respect for people who write like epic high fantasy,
Oh my
like
gosh.
Miko
Miko,
Azul.
yeah.
How do you say this is a bird that is about the size of a chicken?
Without saying this is the
But you
bird that
can't say chicken because there's no
exactly.
chickens in that universe. And she does such
Exactly.
a great job of that,
Mm-hmm.
kind of context clues. You figure out, oh, it's roughly a chicken or it's oxen or something like that.
Right.
But there are no oxen, there are no chickens. Like,
Right.
that's,
Yeah.
that's a challenge. So Portal Fantasy has that advantage. A person can just
Exactly.
look at it and go, oh, it's kind of like a chicken.
Right. Yeah. And the fun thing is playing with them learning the correct language for things in that world.
Yeah.
And then there's words that they don't understand. I'll give this one detail away. I call this series that I'm writing kind of my Narnia meets Wheel of Time series.
Hmm.
Narnia because it's a portal fantasy. And Wheel of Time because I don't know if you know the Wheel of Time series that well, but
Yeah.
it deals with souls a lot.
Yeah.
And I love that idea. So there is a lot of soul adjacent important stuff in my book. I think that's the best way I can say it without giving anything
Yeah.
away. But one element is the bad guy, the big bad, Raven, steals souls from people. And they have a name for it, which is Selucht, which I looked up like soulless in German, and it's sort of that word that I then made into my own
Right.
word
Yes.
because German can be a harsh language in a
Yeah.
good way, and I made that work for me. And so that's a word we don't know,
Right.
and they have to learn it, and then they don't even really get how horrifying it is for someone's soul to be stolen until later in the book because at the time it's just sort of they don't see the person. It's such a learning process. You learn
Yeah.
the word, you learn what the word really means, and then you learn what it really
Right.
means.
And sometimes you have to learn what it really
Mhm.
means to, then go back and go,
Exactly.
oh, I was using this in kind of a lazy, empty way. But now that I've seen the
Exactly.
consequences, wow, this word really, and there's so
Hmm.
many words in English where we have that same experience too, or
Hmm.
whatever someone's native language is, where
Right.
I learned the word and then I learned the concept.
Right.
And there was a lot more to it. My own experience of words that I used for 40 years and then learned, oh, okay, this is what this means to this group of people, or this is what this,
Hmm.
and this has a lot more weight than I was ever giving it.
Absolutely.
That's,
Absolutely. And I think as writers, learning to build that weight around a certain word
yeah,
through our descriptions or through showing it affecting. I mean, I think that's one of the wonderful challenges that we
yeah,
have to really make someone feel like, oh, okay, this word "salute" means something really horrible.
yeah.
And so it's fun to
I wrote this fantasy series that has never seen the light of day many, many years ago. The
right.
premise was that in this fantasy universe, some people had the ability to take control of the bodies of others.
Oh, cool.
And it became kind of like a means to, they would like have duels, and one person at the end would control the other's body.
Oh,
And they
wow.
called it the subjugation. And
Okay. Oh,
so
perfect.
it
Love
was,
that.
and then so I had to introduce this idea with an action scene right away. Let's see one of these duels. And at the end, the other person is kind of a puppet and the other person
Oh.
can control them. What would that do in a universe where some people could do that to others?
Hmm.
And there's only a
Hmm.
few people who are capable of it, and they end up going off to a school. It was kind of a YA thing, and
Sure.
it
Yeah.
ended up being, it's maybe something I should go back to at some
Yeah.
point. I was playing with that idea of, how can I demonstrate power and disempowerment in our world through some kind of ceremonialized visual version where somebody literally controls another person.
Yeah.
And so, same thing. The first time you hear this term, you're going, I don't understand what that is. oh, it's this ritual duel, and one person
Mhm.
ends up owning the other person's
Yeah.
physical body.
Oh, that's awful.
So yeah, it was. I should go back to that.
It sounds like a lot of possibilities.
There was,
Yeah.
yeah, well, and I, I wrote it was one of those, you may have had this experience too, where you're writing a story and it ends up so long that you're like, I've got to split this. This is now two books. It was this huge thing. And
That's
so well,
awesome.
I remember when my first couple of books came out, they're on the shorter side, not like my most recent. And
Yeah.
people would go, oh, you write short books. And I'd be like, no, not always. The ones you're not reading are really long.
That's
Uh,
awesome. Well, this right here is my edit copy of that book. So
yeah.
it's all printed out. I'm going through and doing the
Oh, wow.
line
So you're
editing.
you're a good ways through the process.
I'm done with the book, but not done enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So are you
So
to the like beta reader phase or editing?
I'm about 1.5 revisions away from beta reader.
Yeah.
So
I hear that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But I'm to the point in with this book that if I don't get it to a beta reader, I'm never going to do anything with it. Like
I understand that phase.
I can barely look at it
Yep.
anymore. So yeah.
I've got one in the hands of editors, and it got to the
Nice.
point where I was like, I am excited to get this in their hands, but also I'm really excited to get it out of my own.
Exactly. Yeah.
You tell me what needs to be fixed. And it's been really great. And also, the experience of getting editing feedback. Like I'm like, put on the armor. This is going to be here. Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. This sentence is not working at all. This makes no sense.
Do you find that what makes you the most angry at the feedback that makes you the most upset, I think is a better word, is actually the best feedback?
Oh yeah, it's when they're right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's much easier for me to say, oh no, I don't think you're getting it, and I'm going to keep this, this line.
Right.
Then I have to second guess myself and say, am I just, being precious about this? But the ones that are frustrating, where I'm like, oh, you're right. Oh, what a boneheaded error. I had some characters in one change names. There was a scene where there were a whole bunch of folks, and they were like, who is this person? You've just introduced him in the middle of a fight scene. Oh no, I just messed up the name. And so every time that we mentioned, they were like, who is this new person who's here?
Like,
no, it's the other guy who magically must have vanished to you at that moment because I just changed his name without thinking about it. So
right. Oh, that's funny.
I was like, oh, good catch. I'm embarrassed.
Right. Yeah, but and that's kind of where I am with this. I've actually changed one character's name. I think I've caught it all. But I'm thinking about changing one of the other characters' names because the name is actually the same as a current family member of mine.
Yeah.
And I'm not comfortable with some of the direction that character takes as relation, because when you write with the name, for me, when I write with the name of a family member, I'm visualizing that family member going through that.
Yep.
And I'm not willing to put this family member through that.
You don't want to chase a real family member up a tree and throw rocks at them.
Exactly. I like them too much. And also there may be a romance between him and this person and another character. And that's kind of
I don't want to see that.
Yeah, it's kind of ewing me out. Yeah. So hopefully I'll do that.
Names are so rough because I've been teaching now long enough that I have taught, I think it's over 5,000 students or something.
Oh wow. So you got every name.
All the names, right? And so you end up at this point where you're going, what's a name that I'm not associating with some former kid who was 16 years old in my classroom, and now I don't want to picture that kid. Like, how do I, find names that are? I'm like, no, my next series is going to be fantasy, and it is going to be made up names so that I can avoid all traditional American.
You've got to mention that in the dedication, or
I had to stay away from names that I might know.
That's so awesome. I love that. Cool. Other things I'm daydreaming about, on a more serious note, I'm really concerned about the fact we don't have a good universal healthcare. I'm very worried about our healthcare. And I recently watched the documentary Pelosi.
The one about Pelosi.
Thank you. In case you can't tell, I'm terrible with names.
But I want to see that one. Was it good?
It's really good. Her daughter films it, so you get this lovely mix of kind of her being humanized by her daughter talking to her from behind the camera and her grandkids, as well as her stints as Speaker of the House and how effective she has been. And of course, in that first stint, they passed the Affordable Care Act.
Wow.
And then just all the important things about it. And then of course the Republicans trying to repeal it, not being able to, John McCain coming in and being that Republican vote that said no
Oh,
to repealing it when he'd been so against it before,
yeah.
just so fascinating. And, there's a Republican I respect.
Yeah, somebody of character who said, "This is
Right,
not what I want. This is not what's
right,
best for the my party necessarily, but I recognize reluctantly it's what's best for the country." And
right,
like, oh, somebody who actually cares about that,
right.
not
And,
just flag waving patriotism, genuine concern for the country.
exactly. And while I didn't want him to be president, um, his VP pick aside, he
Yeah,
probably would have been a decent
he
president.
would
Not
have.
one,
He would have
yeah,
been
yeah.
competent and not
Mm-hmm,
harmful, and
mm-hmm. Right.
yeah. That's then that's the that's how I feel about what was the next
Oh,
can
Mitt Romney.
Romney. Romney
Right.
would have been fine. I
Mhm.
disagreed with him on a lot of specific issues, but I didn't think he was a horrible person.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I feel like that party has really shifted. They
Horrible
went from a
people.
party that had ideas I disagreed with to a party that is saying no, we're willing to cause an incalculable amount of harm in an effort to retain power. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but
It's
yeah,
really, really
McCain was a
bad.
person of character.
Exactly. Yeah. And I can get behind that. So that was, so that just always brings back why should your healthcare depend on a job? Why
Yeah.
should your healthcare depend on how much money you make?
Yep.
There are just, it is a human right.
Yep.
And to say not, that it's not is incredibly cruel, harmful to people. I mean, it marginalizes folks who live. I mean, think of the homeless. If someone who's unhoused could get adequate health care, I'm not saying miracles would occur, because
But
I know.
it's part of dealing with houselessness is dealing with so many different things at
Right,
once. You can't
exactly.
just say, well, if we had a drug treatment, well,
Right.
that addresses some people's concerns. You
Mhm.
can't say, well, if we just had enough housing. Well, if somebody is afraid to live in housing,
Exactly.
that
Are they
it's
just can't, like, some
yeah.
people
So how are we
just
going to
can't.
address all, provide the housing,
Yeah,
provide the healthcare, provide the treatment,
exactly.
provide all the employment, all these various things?
Right.
This is a big problem that
It's
needs
huge.
serious people who are
Right.
willing to do serious investment. I read about a cool thing they're doing. I believe it was in Norway, where their policy is housing first.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what they do is first thing they do is give you an apartment. And from our kind of American pull yourself up by your bootstraps
Right.
myth, never
Myth.
true.
Yeah.
Ideology, we say, oh, that's terrible. You're just handing somebody an apartment. And what they found is, yeah, it's cheaper. It is cheaper to give
Right.
someone an apartment than it is to try and do every other thing that would allow them to get their own apartment. Put them in an apartment first, then address these other issues, and
Hmm.
you save money as a
I,
society.
I I think we must have read the same article, because yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just so, it is inhumane for me to live as well as I do. And I donate money and stuff like that. But the reality is, I live near Laurelhurst Park. There are people living in tents right outside Laurel, and there, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we were talking about words that change in their
Mm,
definitions as we get older and really experience, and learn things. And one of the big things that I was taught, but late in life, which was kind of mind blowing to me, is as a society, poverty is a choice.
yeah.
We don't have to have anyone in this country
Right.
who is hungry. We don't have to have anyone
Right.
who is houseless. This is
Yes.
something we have chosen. And once you kind of bear that and you say, we, like, I am
Mhm.
part of that choice
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
live in a society that has chosen this.
Yeah.
And, then you got to own it and say, okay, what
Yeah.
are we going to do to change that
Mhm.
together,
Yeah.
collectively? And as long as we have this attitude of, the kind of us them, we can't come together and say we
Right.
could solve these
Right.
problems as long as we're willing to own them.
I had a really interesting experience the first winter of the pandemic. Well, the February of 2021, I think is right around then. So still in the pandemic, the vaccines hadn't come out yet, or they'd come out, but not everyone had them.
Yeah.
So there was still this fear, this sheltered living
Yeah.
feeling, and it was actually a dark and stormy night.
Yeah.
It was this windy, rainy night, like sideways rain, February, cold, dark. And someone rings our doorbell at 8 o'clock at night, and that never happens. I mean, I first of all, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But I went and answered it, and there was a homeless man out there, and he was just like, I was like, I don't. He was like, don't be scared. He's like, I just need a tarp or something to cover my stuff. And I'm like, oh my god, it's sideways rain night, and I'm like, okay, I don't have a tarp, but I'm gonna let you sleep on our porch tonight. I can't bring you in because it's the pandemic. Um, and but I can give you my porch. That is the best that I can
Yeah.
do. And he started crying. He was so happy. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just giving you my porch.
Right.
But it was just something. And he ended up staying for a couple of days, and we kind of had to like kind of have to go now because there was, it was
Right.
I have the kind of neighbors who were like, chill with it for a few days, but then, they kind of, and so pretty flexible.
And this is what it's so hard for me.
Yeah,
It's on the one hand, I'm saying, what can I do personally? And on the other hand, I'm recognizing that is not the way we will
yeah,
solve these problems. And
exactly.
I don't want to deceive myself into that, but also sometimes if we try and solve the problems ourselves, we don't do the things that are necessary to
Right,
actually solve the problems.
right,
Charity is all the charities in the country will tell you up front they could do everything they could, and that will not be able to solve
right,
even food insecurity. Like we
exactly.
can't feed everyone through charity. We have
Yeah,
bigger problems. On the
yeah.
other hand, then I have to step back and ask myself, am I reminding myself of that fact in order to avoid doing what I need to do?
It's
And
hard,
so
right?
that's so tough.
Yeah.
And I just have to kind of be humble and acknowledge maybe I'm making excuses. And so
Mhm. It's hard to
that's
know. Yeah.
I don't know.
I
But
don't either.
I do
Yeah.
know that just individual action is not enough to solve systemic problems. Like,
And yeah, and it was interesting. I had some conversations with him, and he left his stuff with after asking us. He was respectful, but then he did go off, and it was when the $600 stimulus checks were coming out,
oh yeah.
and so he went to go pick one up. So he clearly at one point had filed tax returns.
Yeah.
Like he was clearly someone who had been not this person. He'd been a man who had a job at some
Right.
point. And I don't know what that job was. So he came back, but he came back like a day later looking rough, like, there were definitely drugs involved. And so I'm just acknowledging that
Right.
because addiction is so hard. um
Self-medicating, like we have some of
Self-medicating,
those things where
exactly,
this guy
yes,
has legitimate struggles, and
right,
then we say, oh, you shouldn't be using drugs. Well, if we don't address why is this person self-medicating, then blaming the
exactly,
drugs is not
right,
really part of it. But at the same
right,
time, we need to acknowledge the drugs will then impair this person's ability to get out of that situation. So
exactly.
how do we address all those things
All those,
simultaneously is
yeah.
not
And
easy.
but one thing we talked about, I was like, because he ended up putting he had a lot of stuff. And I came out and really tactlessly said, wow, you have a lot of stuff. I was like, oh my God, what? And he looks at me, he goes, well, homeless people have stuff too.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, that's one of those moments where
I'm
you look at and go, oh, you look in the mirror
yeah,
and go, oh, wait, I have a
yeah.
lot more stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like,
Yep.
yeah, I'm not right in this scenario. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No,
So
it is so tricky. I mean,
it is tricky.
these are
Yeah.
not easy things to navigate. And at the same
Absolutely.
time, the willingness to engage. I think a lot of folks say this is intractable and therefore I just won't think about it.
But it's not.
That's not how problems are solved.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to, yeah. And, I had a father who dealt with addiction issues. He was fortunate enough and to never be homeless. I don't exactly know how he was able to make that work.
Oh, and maybe he wouldn't have been now. I think it's harder now. I
You
think
may
there
be
are more
right.
people who are
Yeah.
even closer to the line now. And so
Yeah.
look back and go, I know this person who struggled and they didn't end up homeless. They might now.
Right. And it's really valid. But I definitely, my biggest fear for him was him living somewhere where we, when you have a parent who has addictions, especially one who'd been not addicted and then late in
Yeah.
life ran into that. For me, the struggle was reconciling this person with the father who raised me and
Right.
was a loving father, and just a provided, engaged father. And then now he's this person, and I would be very angry with him and not want to talk to him. But then at the same time, oh my God, what if he's living somewhere, he becomes homeless and he dies
Right.
and we never know. And, or that he's a John Doe and eventually, so that didn't happen. He died actually in hospice. We were there at his side. Thank goodness, so
Yeah.
lots of good
But a
closure.
lot of scary time before then.
A lot of scary time, and so I think that when I see someone, especially like the guy on our porch, I see my dad in that a little bit
Right.
because
Right.
it gives a really strong face, and I know other people deal with that too.
Yeah, well, and I think that's good. I mean, I think we need to see
Hmm.
the humanity. I mean, I think that's a
Exactly.
big part of the challenge is we have kind of been trained by our society to say, oh, there are people and then there are homeless people.
Yeah,
And to
yeah,
say, no, people who are houseless are the people who that was your neighbor last
yeah,
week, and
yeah.
that person fell behind on a mortgage payment, and they're
Right,
still your neighbor. They just now are, living in your neighborhood in a different
right.
way. And that's hard
Yeah,
for folks to recognize. This is
like,
still very much a human being with
yeah,
needs and with legitimate, concerns. One of the things I talk about with my students is our class stratification is around different skill sets. And so,
yeah.
we tend to say, oh, this person is homeless because they are deficient, and this person is middle class because they have these skills, and this person is wealthy because they have these skills. When in fact,
Mm,
I couldn't navigate the streets. I lack those skills. I couldn't live that way
yeah,
yet. I haven't learned how to do that.
right.
That
Yeah,
person might struggle with some middle class skills. And there are a lot of people who are very wealthy who couldn't live my life,
right,
couldn't
right.
possibly do what I do. They certainly
They
couldn't
don't know how
live.
to go like you hear about billionaires and they're like, oh yeah, you know what is orange juice is $20, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you're
Just
like,
different
no.
skill. Whereas I couldn't tell you what is the appropriate fruit basket to purchase to make an apology. Like that's not something I've been trained to do. Or how do
I
I
don't know how many
evaluate?
people are trained in that,
Yeah,
to be
or how
fair,
do I
but
evaluate which horse to purchase? Like I don't know how to buy a horse that's for fun. Like
right,
that's
right.
not something that, and so we
That's
have different
awesome.
skill sets, and that doesn't mean
Absolutely.
that somebody who is, not doesn't have a lot of resources doesn't have skills. They have
Well,
skills that I just lack.
and there are folks who live on the streets who have jobs.
Yeah,
They just can't, don't they, think of all of, like a single mother.
yeah.
She
And
may
they
not be able
figured
to
out
get a
how to
job because
navigate,
she,
how to bathe, how
right,
to all these things
right.
that I wouldn't know how to do.
Not a clue,
Yeah,
right? And how to actually show up for work looking somewhat competent,
yeah,
not competent, put together. Let's say put
right.
together. That's a better way to put it, I think.
Yeah.
But still be living on the streets
Yeah,
or
or living
yeah,
out of a car, or
living out of a
knowing
car.
how to
Exactly.
navigate, sometimes living out of a car and sometimes couch
Hmm.
surfing and something. Like I don't know how to do that. And so
Yeah.
I think recognizing these folks have skills, they are adaptable, they're
Right.
intelligent. What is it we can gain from them, and how can we, get them into housing and get them
Right.
healthcare and get them what they need, and not lose this skill set that is available to,
Right.
these are, you know
Give them
smart people doing their
right.
best, just like wealthy people are smart people doing their best. And
Some
so how
some
can
wealthy
we
people.
not treat them like they've got some asset for our
Hmm.
society? So
Exactly.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
totally agree with you on the nationalizing healthcare is. I
It's a
read this
start.
great piece where somebody was pointing out, if anybody came to any modern country now and said, we would like to tie healthcare to your employer, we would go, that's crazy. Why would
Right.
you possibly
It's
do that? And it's
insane.
this weird historical thing where they capped salaries during World War II. And so places that were trying to incentivize working at their place of work said, we'll offer you $10 of health insurance a year. I mean, it
Wow.
really was $10. And that was a free doctor's visit to your
Wow.
house. And that was, and so that's how we ended up in this bizarre circumstance was you couldn't raise wages because you couldn't be taking away from the bullet factory during
Mm,
World War II, but you
hmm.
could offer a doctor visit, and we end up with this whole bizarre
It's
system as a
horrible.
consequence. It's
Right.
it's wild that it happened
Yeah.
that way, and it
Yeah.
makes no sense. And we should be grown up enough to say, if this makes no sense, let's fix it.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah. Let's start fixing that. And then you might open up the door to some other things, like a universal basic income. I don't know how that would work. I have no idea. I'm
the
not.
countries that have experimented
Yeah.
with it, it works really well. I
Yeah.
think there's this myth that if you give people money, they will stop working,
And they
which is
won't.
just not the case.
Right.
People will find the things that they love to work on.
Or some people will be perfectly fine to just do a job that isn't glamorous or anything,
Mhm.
but to feel secure that they can do that job, but and have health care from some, but I don't know, it would just give people freedom. But there's still going to be people who collect the garbage. There's still going to be mail carriers.
because people don't want to have the bare minimum.
Exactly.
So they would do things above and beyond. But I was talking to a writer I really respect who's, saying, oh, if I won the lottery, I would volunteer at the local veterinary clinic or at the dog shelter. Well, what this person is saying is, I would do a job. Like, even if this person had infinite, wealth, they would work. We want to work. They would end up doing the thing that they would love. Right. And that's something we need as a society anyway. You need somebody at the vet clinic. Right. So, yeah, creating this financial incentive system is not healthy for us anyway. I think a UBI, a nice safe floor, so that nobody starves, is just a way for us to have a decent civil society. And I think we'll get there eventually. It's just getting beyond this sense people have that, people must be motivated. Once they see those experiments in the places that are doing them and say, oh, people don't take advantage of it. Right. Why was I presupposing the worst motives for everyone around me, that everybody is evil and lazy?
Right.
No, people want to do things that they love to do, just like you do, because people are people. So,
and people get a charge out of contributing.
Right.
Whatever that means to them. They get a charge out of it. It's so satisfying.
Oh, I don't know if you've ever experienced a period of not having a job, but it's depressing.
I have been, knock on wood, really fortunate. But my husband has experienced that. And, he's always been amazing and great during it. But I know that it has been hard. And so
I think you give somebody a UBI, they're not going to choose that depressing period of unemployment.
Exactly.
They're going to find something to do, because not doing something is hard.
Exactly. Ask any retired person.
Right.
They're filling their days with fun stuff. Or volunteer work.
Retirees are volunteering.
Exactly.
They're working. They choose to work.
Yeah.
So people would do that.
Yeah. And how we, I know it sounds kind of highfalutin to say this, but how a society treats its weaker people. And I'm not totally comfortable with that word, but the people with less, how a society treats the people with less, I think, is what defines a society.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. That is the measure.
That is the measure.
Treating the people who are most in need in our society, that's who we are then.
Yeah.
And so that, we can, it's easy to look at kind of top line numbers and say, oh, we've got the most wealth, or we have the most powerful military. Well, that is true. But if people are starving, is that a success? And so I think that's, we've got a long way to go on that.
I think so. Yeah. All right.
So totally changing the topic to something much, much sillier.
Oh, yeah.
So every week we do a weekly poll. And this one actually might tangentially sort of relate.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
It's about privilege in a way.
Yeah.
We do a weekly poll. And last week, our poll was provided by Scott Boss, the author I interviewed last week. And I fully own this. It wasn't Doug's fault, not your fault. This was my responsibility. I forgot to post it. So we can use this one again. So our post again, not really again. We never did it in the first place. So this will be our post this week, and I will post it, I promise. And I will give Scott a shout out when I do. He asked, how do you feel about bidets? And he had 4 options. I love blasting my butt clean with water. I might try it in the right situation. Never, TP for life. And when in Japan. So where would you fall on that one?
I would fall, have never used a bidet, but I'm going to go with option 2. Absolutely.
You might try the right situation.
Yeah.
I have, tried a bidet
only
when traveling internationally. And that feels like a good balance to me. When in Rome, when in Japan, I will use a bidet. It's not the way I would prefer to roll all the time, but it is. I think it's part of the experience of being in a place where that is the way to go. Is okay. I will use a bidet in Egypt. I will use a bidet in Italy. Yeah, that's
there. You go. I have some friends right at the beginning of the pandemic. They, when the whole toilet paper thing was going on, they coincidentally had just bought the bidet attachment for the toilet, and they were just like,
perfect.
We couldn't have planned better. This is amazing.
Yeah, no, I know people who've made the switch and swear by it. They're like, we'll never go back. This is the way to go. And I'm like, I don't know. And I should acknowledge, this might be one of those areas where at some point in the future, I will have to acknowledge error.
and that's okay.
Should have switched to that years ago. That makes so much more sense and it's so much better. But right now I'm like, I'm still a little stuck in my ways. I'm a middle-aged white guy. We don't like change.
You don't like change.
So I am as progressive as I want to seem. I'm still going, oh no, toilet paper is what I was raised on.
Yeah, you might get there.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So next up is our to read pile. So regardless of whether you're reading on the toilet or on your couch or wherever,
or dancing around on the bidet. I don't really know how that would work, but
yeah,
yes.
there's a downside of the bidet. You could water damage your books. That's
there you go.
so what is on your to read pile?
Well, if there's a sequel to Hellbent, that will be on my to read pile. Oh my gosh. I picked up, so this is not on my to read pile, but this is what led me to something on my to read pile. There's a book called the White Trash Warlock that is on my to read pile. And the reason it's there is there's a writer who I think you should read called named KD Edwards. And he's writing, his series is based on tarot cards. And the first book is called The Last Sun. And it's sort of an Atlantis is now in off the coast of New York kind of thing. And the world knows about it. There's magic, and the leaders of Atlantis are based on tarot cards. So there's the sun, there's the moon, there's the hermit, there's, so Lady, Justice, and so forth. It is probably one of my favorite series.
I should totally check that out.
You should totally. There's 3 books so far. It's going to be a 9-book arc, is what he's saying. But the first 3 books are out. Totally satisfying. It is queer fiction, so queer fantasy fiction.
Good.
Beautifully done. I think the other thing that I really love about it is the found family element to it. And I always love that. So
and I think there's a real value to queer fic is great for found family. Like
exactly.
There's a connection there. And so even somebody like me who's het can go, oh, there's the queer relationships might not be the relationships I would ever be in, but the found family is something that I value highly and need to learn from, and can improve all of our relationships.
Exactly.
And so I think that's one of the reasons I'm like, absolutely, give me queer fic. Like that's great stuff for everyone to read. So.
It really is, yeah. And so one of the folks who blurbed him is the writer of this White Trash Warlock series. I was like, I keep seeing him blurbed, and I really like this series. And I follow KD Edwards on Twitter, and he's kind of called out this writer. So, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go into that, because I'm super sad that the next book for the tarot card sequence isn't out. So let me find some other ways to satisfy that.
And listeners hear me typing away.
Yeah, he's probably looking at it.
I am adding these so that they will be in the show notes. So folks, if you are interested in these and you're saying, I'm driving in my car, I hope I remember that. Don't worry, it'll be in the show notes when you get home. We'll have all these links so you can get your copies.
The next, so of course you can imagine my to be read pile is like everyone's. It's going to kill me one day by falling on top of me, but yeah, exactly. But
this room behind me is so heavy that I'm worried about the structural integrity of my house.
Oh my goodness.
These shelves go to the ceiling, and
wow.
This house, like when you're in this room, the floor creaks in a different way than every other room because of the thousands of pounds.
That's
of books.
awesome. I love that.
I'm fine with that. Like if I go, that's how I want to go.
There are worse ways, right?
Just falls into the floor beneath me, and I'm like, yep, I went out with my books.
And if you're trapped for a while, you can read something.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're good.
He went out after 9 hours of being trapped with very little oxygen, but lots to read.
So he was happy.
Yeah.
Not the next, the way I'll just pick up what I pick up. So I don't know if it'll be the next. So the Bone Shaker book by Cherie Priest that I mentioned, I didn't know. I read it like several years ago, and then I reread it while I was visiting my mom last week. And I didn't realize it was the beginning of a 5-book series.
Oh, nice. That's a nice bonus.
Right. Yeah. So I immediately bought the next 4 books. So I will be picking that next book up.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited. It's a steampunk series. The one I've read takes place in Seattle back in the 1860s. And so it's just got a lot of wonderful steampunk elements with some zombie elements. And yeah, it's this really cool mix. So I look forward to the next book. Yeah.
Mine, and I don't like you. I'm not sure if it will be immediately next, but I have a book that has been sitting on my to read pile for far too long, and I'm thinking to myself, because I know the author. And it's one of those cases where I'm going, I need to read this because, so it's Serena Dory's, and it's The Wrath of the Tooth Fairy. I'm sure you've met Serena around.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Wonderful person. Like, she's fun, she's funny. I really want to read this. And she's written this book that's about kind of, well, I mean, it's all in the title, The Wrath of the Tooth Fairy.
Love that.
Quasi paranormal horror tooth fairy story. And I'm like, yes, I need to check that out.
I can imagine tooth fairies could do a lot of damage.
Right. And so, yeah, I'm really curious to see where she goes with it. And because I know Serena, I know she's going to go good places with it. So
that's fantastic.
If anybody else wants to add to their to read pile, Serena Dory's The Wrath of the Tooth Fairy.
That's a great choice.
A lot of fun.
Maybe tapping into her Terry Pratchett Tooth Fairy mythology.
Well, and she's done a ton of books that are about witches and stuff, and she does a lot with that. This one's more adult. I think those were more, for kids, and so
she's got the whole school, the Hex School series.
Yes, and so I am excited to read this one. So it's on my to read pile, Serena, and I promise I will get to it eventually. Maybe when my house collapses.
There you go. It'll be a great thing to read while running out of air.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool.
So contacts, where can folks find you?
So I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. I just got my post acceptance, so I'm on post now. I haven't quite figured out how to use it. I'll be on Spoutable eventually when Christopher Buzzy gets that up and running. But for now, Twitter and Instagram. Those are good places to find me. However, if you follow me, if you follow me, don't DM me immediately with a "Hey girl" kind of thing. Let's not do that. I'll block you immediately. I do. I bet every woman does. Yeah. Yes. And
I don't get those. Nobody does that to, the old
cis white male. Yeah.
No, it's just not a thing that I deal with. I have to, I'm always encouraging authors, you need to be out there. And then I have to step back and say, it's a different experience for me on social media than it is for everyone else. I'm encouraging people to go into places that are often unsafe for them. Whereas,
yeah, I mean, you DM me something like, "Hey girl," like if someone DMs me and they clearly know me and they're reaching out, that's a different thing. But if it's a "Hey girl" kind of thing, I'm block, delete, I don't respond. That's why, and my Instagram account is locked for that reason. So I'll follow you back if you seem legit, and I'll be stoked about it. So.
Yes. But please, people, be civil and humane and decent on social media. You are not anonymous as you think, and you can cause real impact. So be a good person on social media.
Exactly. I don't need to know how beautiful my smile is. I have people to tell me that.
Right. In people person. You actually know to tell you that. Well, before we get to our send-off, I want to make sure I thank all the folks that I need to thank. So thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like that song by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland. Thanks to Halizna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you are in a band and you would like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's songs. You can email those into me. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and for taking the blame when it doesn't. Thank you for that. I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of Not a Pipe Publishing. So please go to notapikepublishing.com. Check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much, including LeeAnn's books out there on notapikepublishing.com. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Please check out LeeAnn's books, rate and review them too. Clicking that 5th star and writing even a short review makes a huge difference. You can make a writer's day. So take the moments, the mere seconds that it takes to do that for a writer that you appreciate. And now we get to our send-off, and I talk way too much. And so, LeeAnn, this is all yours. How shall we end the show today?
Oh my gosh, what did I end up saying? I have to look it up.
That could be our send-off.
Well, it could be the send-off, but I think what I say a lot to people, because I actually work in the tech world, when the job that makes me money currently, is technology is awesome until it isn't. And that is true about many things in life. So maybe it's an everything in moderation kind of thing. So there you go. That's my send-off.
If I take my time